Does Nikki Haley want to be hated by half of the Republican Party? In the past, people like the aforementioned Santorum, Rick Huckabee, Mike Huckabee, whomever were like, fine, you're going to hate me for doing it, but I'm chasing the front runner and I'm going to get my people out and we're going to go on. And you're going to continue to get, maybe she could get 40% of the delegates. But in so doing, she would not only earn the lasting hatred of the Trump core, that third of the party, but also the large number of Republicans who just want it to be over. But the last thing is, we know the media, I want to cover a race, right? I like it. I find it interesting. I find politics interesting. And I have devoted my vocational life to its coverage and analysis. But if viewers aren't tuning in, I haven't seen what the Tuesday night ratings were like. But if people are tuning in and clicking on it, it will continue to get covered. It will continue to happen.
Chris, I just don't see how she stays in and gets romped in her home state, where in New Hampshire, she had Chris Sununu, the governor, the popular governor, out there campaigning for her. In her home state, the major political figures in that state have endorsed Trump, and he is leading by an even bigger margin than he was leading in Iowa and New Hampshire. That's difficult for me to see. And I think there is a cost to her continuing, in that right now she could offer her endorsement in exchange for something for him. She may not want to be the vice presidential nominee. She may not want to be in his cabinet, but she may want to get something for the people on her campaign. She may want to get them positions on his campaign. She may want to push him on policy positions in exchange for her endorsement. I think the chances of her being able to get something in exchange decreases as the campaign goes on.
Unless she improves. So right now I'm looking at the most recent polls out of South Carolina, and they're all taken before Iowa and they're all taken before New Hampshire. And Trump is up 30 points, right? There's a Emerson poll mid that has him up 29 on Haley. Now, the next poll that's taken in South Carolina, he will not be up 29 on Haley. He'll go up probably a little bit, but she'll go up too. And if you're Haley, who in 2010 fought all the same people who have endorsed Trump, right? Like the sitting governor, Henry McMaster, and others, those were her opponents. Those are the people who she fought in 2010. So if you're Haley, if I were Haley and I was willing to take the risk on 2028, like if I was willing to risk the future, I'd go down to South Carolina and I'd run like hell, right? You know the state, you know the people. And for her, if she could do 40% in South Carolina, which is not unthinkable, if she could replicate her performance there that she did in New Hampshire or close to it, I don't know. Like basically, she's got to send a message to the suburban, affluent Republican electorate that's in California, that's in suburban Texas, that's in Georgia 2 weeks after that. If she can send a message to them like, we're still doing this, then maybe they hang around. I don't know. It's the thing that I like about this race, frankly, is the variability in what we could see, right? If it were Trump and DeSantis, if DeSantis had been viable in New Hampshire, or if it were Trump and let's say Christie was the second place in New Hampshire, you would know very well what would happen next. But in this case, depending on how Trump responds and what is, I guess the question is this: what is Nikki Haley's risk tolerance? Because there's reward if she's willing to sort of mortgage her future. And the speech that she gave was right.
And what does she want? Does she want, what does she want in 2024 and 2028? Does she want to be in the Trump cabinet? Does she want to be potentially the vice presidential nominee, of which I don't think there's a big chance, but I think that's part of it. And I don't know the answer to that.
So I agree with your premise that selling out now is more valuable than selling out after South Carolina if she loses South Carolina by 30 points. Selling out later if she loses South Carolina by 10 points and it's a competitive race and Trump has to go do it. And poor Tim Scott has to go down. And I think Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis did not expect a race as close as it was in New Hampshire, and they were expecting it to be over. So now Tim Scott's got to spend a month in South Carolina running against Nikki Haley and doing cringy interviews. If you're Haley, if you can hold Trump's feet to the fire, you get more later on, right? You get a bigger, whatever it is that you want, you get a bigger bite. And then you might even, I think Trump does not want her as his running mate for a couple of reasons. One is he doesn't like her, I'm sure, and doesn't want an ambitious younger woman nipping at his heels.
So you think Elise Stefanik is out too?
I think Elise Stefanik, Kristi Noem, I think Katie Britt has some promise, right? Trump really likes her and her husband, and she is accessible and palatable to mainstream Republicans and is a good, telegenic, she's good at it. She's a possible.
And that husband's telegenic too, Chris.
Right. And Trump loves them because they're, as he would say, right out of central casting.
Yep. The husband was the quarterback at the University of Alabama.
And he played for Bob Kraft, who is a friend of Donald Trump. So that's one. Ben Carson is one. Like who Trump picks as his running mate. Obviously, we know Trump will turn it into a reality show that will run until July. Right. This is going to be a long running show. But I think if I'm Trump, I look at Elise Stefanik and I say, so if Mike Pence was the vanilla version of Ted Cruz, you want to appeal to the Ted Cruz voters, but you want somebody who will be subservient, right? You want a person who will not be problematic. I think Noam, if you're doing it that way, like, okay, I want a younger woman who is attitudinally aligned and absolutely ambitious. Noam is the better of those two because Stefanik, deep down, Trump has to know that she's a phony, right? Like it's the phony vibes are very strong with her, given her peripatetic policy positions and relentless ambition. So I don't know, but I think Trump is not going to know until he's got the nomination absolutely sewn up. And if he has to pay a higher price to get the nomination sewn up, if Haley inflicts that price, Trump will be obliged to choose somebody who can appeal to those Haley voters and the voters in places like the suburbs of Dallas, like the suburbs of Atlanta, like the Phoenix suburbs, where Nikki Haley scores well.